All right, everybody. Welcome back to part two of Canine Audiology and Canine Hearing Protection with our guest, Allison Cornelius, CEO of the Greater Birmingham Humane Society, and Dr. Peter Skip Scheifele with University of Cincinnati Fetch Lab. Again, to our guests, thank you all so much for making time to come back on here for part two. I think we have a lot more ground to cover in terms of audiology and hearing protection for all animals alike. Before we get started, though, Allison, did you have an update for us in regards to? I know last time we spoke on the AI data center going close to your facility is currently going through the courts, and there's a lot of interweaving of just a lot of different issues from audiology side of things. Do you have an update on where that stands currently?
So actually, we have not yet filed our lawsuit. I think we'll be filing today. There was a lawsuit filed on behalf of residents whose homes back up to the site where construction has begun and is continuing on the demolition of the previous building. Our case will be filed today. That case last week, testimony was given for about 4 days, and then the judge ended up recusing herself on the last day. That was unfortunate. So it has to start over this week with a new judge. But it was interesting to be in the courtroom last week and listen to the residents talk about the impact on their lives for the last 4 months from the noise that's coming from just the type of construction that it sounds like you have to do when you're building a facility of this size and drilling and blasting for the type of a foundation that will hold that kind of equipment. And so it was very interesting after hearing Dr. Skip's presentation a couple of weeks ago and having that knowledge, and then hearing these residents who are being exposed to this noise from 7 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night, and the impact that it may be having on their psychological behavior, their pets, the damage to their homes, which of course is really unfortunate. But I don't have the science, but it was interesting to listen to these retired men and women talk about behaving in ways that they've never behaved before, feeling aggressive, feeling they can't sleep, they are not resting, they're experiencing some health issues and even maybe some psychological issues as a result. They're arguing more with their partners, and their quality of life has changed dramatically. So that's the update on that part. I'm also continuing to watch the developments with the Nashville Zoo. The Nashville Zoo has not yet, I know that's become an international story because that data center would be extremely close to a spotted leopard, and all of their animals that are at the zoo, as you all know, if you've ever been to a zoo, are outside. They certainly have some interior areas, but some of the animals don't. They have not quoted any experts yet or referenced any experts. If people haven't kept up with that debate, the mayor has now asked for an eminent domain from the legislature or the government or from a judge to try to prevent DC blocks from going in there that close to the animals. I suspect as that case continues, if they don't win on that, they will probably be calling somebody like Dr. Skip to get him out there to ask him how this is going to impact rare species, exotic species. For our situation, the county building is already built on our land. We were just getting ready to build the hospital, to remind everybody, which is it would have had 12 surgical suites in it. We train all of the fourth-year vet students pretty much in the Southeastern Conference schools that have a vet school, and our adoption center would have been next door. So we're really grappling right now with the fact that we probably, if we can't stop Nebius from building, we'll have to move to a completely different site, and how we will be able to get the county to agree to have a brand new building built when they just built one that we're moving into in August, right? So we're really concerned that that's about 14,000 animals that intake to that facility per year. They would be about probably 900 to 1,000 feet from Nebius at 600 megawatts. We're still trying to get them to disclose the actual equipment manufacturers for Dr. Skip to look at. We've gotten some equipment information, but he's really got to know cycle times, and he's got to know a whole lot more information in order to give an informed opinion as to whether that will have an impact on our animals that are outside. It's going to be also interesting in today's presentation because Animal Arts designed our campus. They designed the county building. We really insisted on that, which was a lot more expensive, and the hospital and the adoption center. And Animal Arts has a philosophy of designing interior kennels to be fear-free, to reduce anything that would trigger a canine from barking, which is, of course, what creates the noise that hurts their ears and hurts the staff's ears. But so the county building was designed that way, with pods and with a lot of sound abatement, and to not have the dogs have a reason to bark. They take a lot of pride in designing kennels that when you walk in, the dogs are not barking, and we visited several of those around the United States. It's kind of amazing to go into them. And that requires a lot of work on the architect's part, visual cues between animals, staff walking in, and the animal in a way that does not cause the animals to become too excited, which triggers the barking. But listening to the podcast and Dr. Skip 2 weeks ago, I've really come to this place now where I had an epiphany that we rarely see canines without a human with them. And some of the things Dr. Skip has shared with me, and I'm 61, I've never thought about. So I think this podcast is going to be really important, because we need to start understanding that whatever the canine is hearing, the human is hearing. And while the soldiers may have protection on their ears, it didn't occur to me that people walking their pets near a continuous sound that is above 90 or 100 dBs, I don't know that they really understand that they may be having a negative impact, and their pets may be. So this AI factory is being built next to a state park where people camp for an entire weekend that may be bringing their pets with them. So I'm really starting to rethink this whole thing as to how much noise can the human and the animal be exposed to for how long, and what rights do these people have to know whether or not their hearing may be being damaged and they don't know it. Because as he said, you're not going to know it till you're old, and by then it's too late. So I'm just intrigued by all of this topic, because I don't think the average person thinks this applies to them. And I think data centers are going to change that dramatically. So that's my 2 cents for today.
1000%. I cannot agree enough. And I think it's always disheartening to see, no matter what, I feel like right now all across the country, no matter what location you're at, a data center is at play in some way, shape, or form in the news. And it's disheartening to see the voices of thousands, if not tens of thousands, that these are impacting, silenced or just not taken into consideration over a select elite few. And that's very, very, it's discouraging, and it's sad, not just for us, but now the animals, right? What we're diving into here. So I just hope, I genuinely believe all these conversations that we're having, yourself, Dr. Skip, these are going to bring so much to light of information, data, science, to why we should care, why everybody should care. So,
we may be ahead of our time. Yeah, we may be ahead of our. I sort of wonder if Dr.
Right.
Skip and I won't be in the grave. I can picture a future where people are walking down a sidewalk and there's a sign that says, "Beware, you're entering a zone where you need to put headphones on." I mean, isn't that
Yes.
crazy? But I sort of thought you might have a day coming 10 years from now, if the data center's there and operating, where there ought to be warning signs that you're about to enter an area where you and your dog need to put some headphones on, or if you're jogging or running, you might want to put some headphones on, because you're going to be exposing yourself to something. It's just so crazy to me. It's almost like Orwellian, you know? So
I don't think we're far off. I don't think we're far off.
We'll see.
Well, on that note, no, it's perfect leeway. Dr. Skip, should we pick up right where we left off on part 1?
Yes. Okay. This part of the podcast is specifically dedicated towards noise, laws that control it, and the science and health. So a little bit of a review for maybe somebody that didn't make the last one. When it comes down to acoustics and audiology, we have 5 types of noise that we, as audiologists and ENTs and acousticians, need to be concerned with. And you see them listed here: continuous, intermittent, that's where duty cycles come in. Impulse noise, which I understand from Allison, is what's uh, well, that's more for military. Uh, Low frequencies that we can't hear, but I will explain in a little while why they are important. Impact noise is what Allison was bringing up before we got on here. Pile drivers, jackhammers, uh, hammer and anvil, that's all impact noise. And so it is definitely on the list of things that an audiologist would go, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. So having said that, I put this chart up here because I want people to kind of get the idea of, how this actually works. What the graph is showing us here with regard to intensity and loudness, okay? Here's what happens. If you're listening to something at a certain decibel level, and I caution, the listeners that a lot of stuff that I read, just says, well, something is so many dB. But that's not very clear. To an acoustician, that doesn't really mean anything. Unless you say what kind of dB, because there are many different kinds, you're talking about. Typically, if a person uses a sound level meter like we do, to monitor noise relative to people, you have to use a reference called dBA, which means that whatever you're measuring is related to when a human can just detect a sound. In other words, 20 micropascals of pressure. But with animals, we don't use that. We use dBSPL, which is the actual sound level that is not referenced to a human ear, but it's the reality of what's actually happening. So if you look at the graph here, if you start to make things more intense, you go up and up and up in decibels, okay? And then you're at some point, which is, let's say, the sweet spot, if you will. And every 3 dB that you go up, you are now adding 2 times the power of that, whatever that source signal is. And it will keep on going up in this kind of a manner until you reach a point where now you are at the threshold of pain and everything is saturated. So what does that mean? It means, well, I always use this with my MDs, is that, if your kids are playing music real loud and you come in and say, hey, turn that down, if they only barely touch the dial, then they're not turning the audio down by more than 3 dB. And it takes 3 dB for a person to understand and feel like the noise has been turned up or down. So then, then the next thing you know, father's back at the door saying, I told you to turn it down, but you can't. His ears don't know. And that's assuming he's got good audiology. So anyway, just to let you know that, there are lots of different kinds of decibels depending on what they're referenced to. Example, we reference our hearing to dBA, which has a sound recognition or just noticeable detection level, 20 micropascals. In the former lives, people wrote a lot of cases, papers about marine mammals and, oil drilling and whatever like that. And they would say, well, the oil drills, are at an intensity of 120 dB. But they never, that's all they said. They told what the reference is a reference to human hearing, animal hearing, environment, or cans of beer, I don't know. And so what happened was, it was later found that they were referencing it to 20 micropascals, which is for a human. But because marine mammals live in the water and sound travels 5 times faster in water than in air, what they found out was 20 micropascals is not the reference for water. 1 micropascal is, and that changes the whole game, because that means that if you subtracted 52 from that 120, that's what the marine mammal will actually be exposed to. So we have to be very careful because decibels get tossed around all the time, but half of the time it's incorrect. I know you saw this in the last thing. This is an ear that has a mammalian ear, actually a human one, that has lost a good bit of its hair cells, which means that this is a person that has a severe to profound hearing loss. And so just so you have a view in your eye there about what really is going on inside your ear. Also, I showed the one in red. This is a hearing threshold curve, which tells you how many decibel SPL. This is for animals now, but humans can use it. You just have to recognize that it's not what an audiologist would test you at. That tells you how many dB SPL a sound has to be to just detect it. If it's on the line, then you just detect. So for instance, right here at 20 hertz, okay, we're at the low end of things for a human, and it's up here. And so it has to be at about 65 dB SPL for a human to just detect that the sound is even there. And then the black ones here are for a dog. And you can see that a dog hears more frequencies than we do. But the curves, basically a mammalian curve, looks a lot like this. Okay, so let's get on with it. Hearing protection. I was tasked a long time ago, because I am military and can deal with the clearances and stuff, of coming up with a reasonable hearing protection device. At that time was thought of because of dogs that were going over to theater, and they were having a good number of rides in a helicopter, and the choppers are very noisy inside. In fact, the choppers are about 110 decibels SPL in the interior. So we came up with this, which we called a snood. Okay, and you can see that in the ear areas here we have actually rubberized foam that is acoustically attenuation, good attenuation. And the reason we went with a snood is because our military dogs and sometimes our police dogs are already laden down with so much stuff that they have to carry, everything from cameras to you name it, that we didn't want to add something else that was going to be obtrusive. So this is what we came up with. It fits over the dog's head. You'll see a picture in a minute. Now, I want to make clear for humans and animals, okay, whether they're exotic animals or whether they're domestic animals, there are permissible exposure levels that are federally mandated and you have to live within those constraints. And that when we build or make a protection device for the human or animal, they have to be tested. The test that we use, you can see this dog here is one of my border collies, and she's usually my test subject. The test that we use is called an F-Meyer, F-M-I-R-E. Meyer stands for noise in real ear, and the F is for field. There's a Meyer test that's used in the lab. The reason why F-Meyer became useful is because it uses a little different probe, but the fact of the matter is that laboratory tests, real ear tests, actually are very accurate, but they're not necessarily what real world people and animals are going to experience. And so therefore, to make sure that the unit is workable in a real world situation, We use an F-Meyer where it's tested actually in the field. Okay. Of all the different kinds of hearing loss, noise-induced hearing loss is at the top. Okay. Yes, there's congenital loss because of bad breeding or whatever the case may be. When animals, I'm talking mammals now, when mammals and mammals get older, we start to lose a bit of our hearing because the ear has been taxed for what, 80 years, maybe 90 years if you're good. And so that's called presbycusis, deafness with age. Okay. And then we have other things, sudden onset, which is a whole different thing with regard to breeding and whatever. Early onset, yeah, and then ototoxicity, because a lot of the drugs that we use, nobody ever knew that they were ototoxic because people didn't think about, well, what if you put this in the dog's ear, or what if you put it in your ear, or whatever like that? You know, it gets rid of the ear infection, but what does it really do? Well, it's destroying hair cells in your inner ear. We now have a listing of types of chemicals and pharmacy that that we know are ototoxic, and so we try not to use those if we have to, or to use them in the way that a vet or an MD would tell you, which means you can't be going and pouring this stuff in the dog's ear or your ear, you know, every day. That's not gonna work. Hyperacusis is something I want to talk about with regard to what Allison was talking about with regard to impact noise. She was talking about jackhammers or pile drivers, and we can talk a little bit about that now. Okay, let me go back. So here's the deal. For human beings, federal law says that if you are subjected to 85 dBA, you can only be in it for 8 hours. After that, they recommend that you wear hearing protection. They recommend it, okay? It's not mandatory. And so, because then outside of 8 hours, you're now starting to do damage to the ear. According to federal law, once again, Occupational Safety and Institute there is, if you are exposed to 90 dBA, you can be in it for 8 hours, according to the government. And, but your employer, or wherever it is that the environment you're working with, whoever's in charge, is responsible to buy and fit you with hearing protection devices. There's no wiggle room. If you expose yourself and you're not wearing hearing protection and you're in 90 dBA, you know, for X number of hours, then don't even think about going for a workman's comp case, because it ain't going to happen. Okay. So, and then the other thing is that the government uses what we call a 5 decibel dBA fence, which means that every time, if you're exposed to 90 dBA, you get your hearing protection. You can be in it for 8 hours. If it goes up to 95 dBA, now you can only be in it for 4 hours. If it goes up to 100 dBA, you can only be in it for 2 hours. So this is the protection that humans are supposed to have. Now, in a case where somebody is making a noise and you are exposed to it, but you don't work for them, they don't have to provide you with anything. You need to do that yourself. And I'm going to talk about how you figure that out in a minute. So that's the human side of things. Before I go to the animal side, let me make another caution here. We are exposed many times to low frequency sound, meaning we don't have the hair cells that will acknowledge anything that is of a frequency below 20 hertz. And so the question becomes, is that bothersome to you? Is there any physical problem with that? The answer is yes. If you are exposed to a low frequency, you don't even know that you're being exposed to it. However, if that frequency is being broadcast, on a regular basis, then what's going to happen is your peripheral nervous system is going to register it. You won't hear it, okay? You might not even feel it, but your peripheral nervous system will feel it. And here's the track that you're on. If you keep on getting exposed to it, first thing that's going to happen is you're going to not be able to sleep. So you're going to start losing sleep and you don't know why you can't get to sleep or whatever like that. That's the reason why. If you continue after that, then you're going to start to lower your immune system, which means you're liable to come down with something that looks like the flu, okay? And eventually you're going to lose some of your hearing. But because your peripheral nervous system has been impinged upon by this low frequency, then you also start to see some effects that are neurological. You know, hyperacusis is one of them. Hyperacusis means that sounds that should sound normal, like a person talking to you face to face, sound extremely loud to you. And so then you get behavioral problems. So just so you know that is true. We had that problem when wind farms first came out, because if you put the wind farm in the wrong place and you live close to it, the rotor goes around at basically 2 hertz. You can't hear that. If you get close enough, you can feel it. However, most people didn't feel it, and that's exactly what happened. And as far as animals are concerned, there were whole herds of sheep that were affected by it. So yes, you have to be worried about low frequency. You have to be worried about high frequency. And there are federal regulations regarding that. For dogs, a dog's permissible exposure level is 85 decibels for 6 hours. Okay? And then they're going to start to be affected in the same way that a human exposed to 95 dB would be if they were exposed to something that, that is relative to a human ear. So this is the reason why even in Hollywood, dogs that are on camera or horses that are on the set can only work for a certain period of time, and then they have to be given ear rest. So yeah, we are aware of these things. Who's not aware of it? Probably 90% of the population. And I didn't become aware of it myself until I was in medical school and then, now teaching in audiology. Because as I mentioned before, audiology is probably the last thing people think about. And so it just kind of goes by the wayside. So now with regard to hearing protection devices, if you go to the store and you want to buy a hearing protection device, then what happens is you look at the package. And according to EPA, the rule is that on the package, there should be a NRR with a number after it. The NRR stands for the noise reduction rating. And what it's telling you is that number is the amount of attenuation, the amount of noise that the device will not let get through to the ear, provided that you are wearing it in the way that it is supposed to be worn and that you wear it all the time. So the noise reduction rating, that's what we go by. But in fact, the noise reduction rating is established by the maker of the hearing protection device, whether it's an animal or people, and then and so it's done in a lab. To get it to the point where it's going to be more applicable to the environment that you're in, the work that you do, etc. You take the noise reduction rating and you derate it. So it's called a 50% derating of the noise reduction ratio. And basically, it'll derate, it should derate down by about 7 decibels, dBA for people, SPL for animals. So those are the rules with regard. How do you know if what you're putting on your head or in your ear is actually attenuating enough sound to protect you? That's how you do it. You look at the noise reduction rating. And then way we test it is, again, an F-Meyer field microphone in real ear, where we put I'll go back to the picture so you can get a better view of it. So like this dog has now been wired for an F-Meyer, although it's in a lab, but we have her in a sound booth, an audiology sound booth, and she has a wire that goes into the hearing protection device under it and into the ear canal. And it registers how much sound is making it through those earmuffs into the actual ear canal, into the ear. And then you can see a speaker in the background will usually, produce noise up to 110 dBA or dBSPL for the dog. And that's how they should be tested. Now, according to EPA rules, every hearing device in a package should be labeled with an NRR, a noise reduction ratio. And that's what you should be looking for, okay? Because that's the law, if you really want to get down to it.
So,
Okay.
Dr. Skip, really quick on that slide. And apologies for those listening on Spotify. We will have these up on YouTube, video wise, so you can reference these slides. And also, these slides will be available to the public. But looking here, a few things. So for that specific dog, right there in that picture, I noticed the biggest thing, and this goes for the caps or the current reg spec system, the biggest thing here I'm seeing visibly for this dog to have true hearing protection is, just like us, a true seal that blocks dBs away from the ear canal, a true legitimate seal around the skull, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the reason why we do an F-Meyer, because what you find with especially early older types of earmuffs, both for humans and for dogs, is that if you run an F-Meyer on it, you find out that there's all kinds of leaks that can occur if the earmuffs are too big, if they're too small, if they're not on right, or whatever like that. And then they're not going to conform to the NRR. And so, that's not a help to you.
Because if there is just, and I've tested this on myself before mowing the lawn, just causing a little break in that seal on my headphones, my walkers. Even if there's a slight leak there for where dBs can get in due to either an improper fitment of the hearing protection or the dog's skull, whatever, creating a leak, that's a big issue.
Yes, it is. Not for nothing, but I'm just saying that when we originally came out with caps, which are now known as Rec Specs Ear Pro, the reason why we went with a snood kind of a thing is because, unlike earmuffs, the snood is not going to travel, very easily off the ear, and it's kind of sealed around by the fact that it has to adhere to the dog's whole head and neck. And so we find that they've been very good, I understand, from reviews in times of the 4th of July fireworks and certainly, but they were designed for people that are going to be shooting guns around the dog, military application. Now, they're not the be all end all, certainly, but at least with a hearing protection device on the market that has an NRR, it means somebody has looked at that and tested it. But the caveat is exactly what you say, Alex. You have to fit it, and you have to fit it right. and you have to make sure that it stays fitted like that.
Right.
So because otherwise, and especially dogs that are running around or they're hunting or whatever the case may be, yeah, stuff is going to move. We believe that it moves a little bit less with a snood type thing, but that's not sacred either. So yes, you're right.
Perfect. And regardless of the system you're utilizing or looking at purchasing, sounds like the biggest takeaways right there are top three: proper sealment, a scientifically established NRR, and proper F-Meyer testing at some way, shape, or form on that product.
Yeah. And the packaging won't tell you it was tested with F-Meyer, but in order to get a noise reduction rating, it had to have been tested. So you make that assumption, and it's fair.
Perfect.
And I got a
Okay.
question.
Go.
You said we can't feel hertz, less than 20 hertz, right? We don't know. We cannot maybe hear less than 20 hertz, right?
We cannot hear it. You might be able to feel it, but maybe not.
Okay. And is that the threshold? Would I be able to know something was happening at 21 hertz? What's the number of hertz at which I know something's happening?
Okay, this is a good question, and the answer is kind of wishy-washy, but here's the deal. A human can hear, let me get this here. Oh, I blew right by it. Okay, so here's the human hearing threshold curve with the dog ones. A human can hear down to 20 hertz, but that is, it's hard to say that. Basically what I'm telling you is the inner ear of a human being has hair cells that will allow you to hear the frequency of 20 hertz and above. However, not everybody can do that. It's a by person kind of a thing. And in fact, you have to make things very loud at those low frequencies for you to go, oh, I hear that. Okay, you might feel it, but so it really and it depends on the person how their hearing is. Generally, the rule is that when you're young, very young child, and up into your maybe teens, you can theoretically can hear all the frequencies from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz. And again, look at 20,000 hertz. It's got to be loud for you to detect it. It's a very high frequency. Can humans detect it? In theory, yes. But the fact of the matter is, once you reach about, 21 years old, then you start to actually get that hearing loss. And so you're probably not going to hear either 20 hertz or 20,000 hertz. And then after that, it's how you treated your ears along the way. Again, if the sound intensity falls on this line, then that's when a human, in theory, based on tests, can just detect that sound is made. And you get better and better until you get to your best frequency of hearing, which for us is between 2 and 6 kilohertz, because that's where human speech is, and our ears have adapted to be able to hear another human talk. And then, it goes up and it's more. And you can see that every mammal has a similar hearing curve. They're just at different levels. I hope I answered your question.
You did, because you're going to get there, because what I'm wondering is whether we're talking about barking in the kennel or talking about pile hammers. And these hertz.
Well, it's both. I mean,
right. How is it?
Yeah.
Is the damage happen? Does it have to be barking that never stops for 8 hours or 6 hours? Or does it mean intermittent barking over an 8-hour period is a problem? Because is it that the sound has to be continuous and then it causes the damage over the 6 or 8 hours you mentioned earlier? Or if it's happening intermittently over 6 or 8 hours, it's a problem?
It's actually both. Let me give you another human example. So Alex was saying he mows his lawn. So you put hearing, say you go out and you mow the lawn, but you're not wearing hearing protection. And maybe you're out there for an hour mowing. Okay. you come back in, go get a drink or whatever like that. Your ears have been exposed already, and the hair cells are starting to fatigue. They're not at a point where you have, a severe hearing loss or anything, but you're on that path. If you go back out and mow some more, now you're adding to that, and you're driving yourself closer to a noise-induced hearing loss of significance. So yeah, I mean, our hearing thresholds and animal hearing thresholds, those lines go up and down all day, depending on what you're exposed to and how long. If you reach the 8-hour point, now you've done enough significant damage that you got some kind of a loss that's not going to be easily recoverable. So we call that the up and down, where the threshold moves up because you've been listening to whatever, and so you don't have a hearing loss yet, but you're on the trail to it, and that's called a temporary threshold shift.
Yeah.
If you keep doing that,
yeah, because when you say, after you told me about this the first time, so I'm trying to get it all straight in my head as a quick student to all this. Damage to the ear is one thing, but when we start talking about the peripheral nervous system, we're talking about your brain and your spine and your digestion and your heart rate and your breathing. We're talking about some really big stuff. So I'm trying to sit here and really think. You're not just talking about, you're saying that when these sounds have one type of thing happening to my ear at a certain level, but at another level, there's a hertz. I guess you're saying all sound produces hertz, right? There's always a hertz with a dB.
Yeah, it's a frequency. Yep.
Okay. And that frequency is not only impacting my hearing, it is impacting my brain and my spine and all the messages going between my brain and my spine out to my body, right?
Absolutely.
And same for the animal, right?
Yep.
Got it.
No different. A mammal is a mammal is a mammal. So.
And if I'm underwater, it's worse. Got it. Okay. Just wanted to get
Yeah.
my point of reference here.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you've ever, a parade passes you and you're standing on the sidewalk and somebody's beating that bass drum, you feel it in your chest. Okay. And that's your peripheral nervous system reacting to, okay, there's a low frequency that's happening here and there. But the thing to remember, like I say, is here's an example. You go to a concert with your friends. You come out of the concert and your ear feels a little full. It's because you have a temporary threshold shift. Now you've made everything louder, and so the ear needs to function at a higher threshold. But if you had 3 friends with you, eventually you're gonna recover. Some people will recover in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. One of your friends may take an overnight to recover, maybe a day. It depends on, again, the person themselves and their level of hearing. And so that's where temporary threshold shift has hit you. You've done some damage to the ear, but it's not anything super amazing and it can recover. But if you keep on doing that, then you're going to reach a point where you're at a permanent threshold shift and you will never hear those frequencies again. Okay. Another case in point is when computers first started, we had the big chunky monitors, to have to carry around. People that like secretaries and stuff that were in front of a monitor like that all day long actually started to lose some high frequencies that they didn't even know they could hear. But that's what was coming out of the monitor electronically, and you wouldn't notice the difference. So, yeah, this is a kind of a weird, complex thing, but that's how ears work.
Okay, and I got it. I'm learning real quick.
Okay, so that's the deal on hearing protection devices. Now I want to go into what kind of things with dogs do we see? Well, transportation. Okay. When we start talking about transportation, kennels, things like that, reverberation is the thing we have to worry about. When a sound bounces off the wall and comes back to you, you're getting whatever you put out, and you're getting it intensified by the reverberation coming back to your ear. So, dogs in a kennel and they're all barking. Yeah, they're barking, and the barking goes up because one does it and then the other one's got to follow it and whatever like that. But those sounds are all reverberating off of the kennel and going back to the dog, which means now you're asking for a problem. Think about a marine mammal that's out in an aquarium. Aquarium, we don't build them the same way anymore. Thankfully, we learned about it. But in the old days, when you just put a square concrete gunite pool in, and then you hooked it up to, a massive number of pumps that are making the water go away, they're getting reverberation through the concrete from the pumps. Well, they can't get away from it. It's not like you can let them outside. Okay, so now you put them in there and you have a big problem. Case in point, we at Georgia Aquarium had some beluga whales that they got from Mexico. Those beluga whales were kept in one of the largest, oldest wooden roller coasters running around it. And they had problems when they came because of sound. Okay, you just can't keep on exposing these guys to noise. And a roller coaster, really. So this is showing you some different kinds of transports. If you're transporting the dog in your car and you put them in a crate or whatever like that, as long as you're not blasting AC/DC to Stairway to Hell, you probably are just fine. That you can transport them that way, but that's not the way we always transport things. And of the three pictures here, the best one is the one on the right, but I make a caveat to that. Look at what this is made out of. It's all metal. Talk about reverberation. You might as well just put a mirror there, because whatever is going out is coming back to the animal. So, you get roughland, crates that are more made out of some kind of plastic or whatever like that. So, yeah. So here's the snood. Okay. Our snood has a noise reduction rating of 18 dB. It means it's going to reduce the noise level by 18 decibels. Now, could we make it more than that? Yeah, it depends on what the material is that we put into the ear sleeve. This was the original out of the box thing that we did when we were testing them. You can see some of the dogs we're testing on. And so an RR of 18 was, basically what we got. Can you be better? Sure. Manufacturers are all the time putting out an acoustic foam and things like that are really good. And we're not even talking about noise cancellation, which is hard to put in a snood, but can be put into other types of in-ear devices. Again, I caution everybody. It takes three things. You have to have all of them, not one, not two, to get a hearing loss, whether it's for you or your dog or an exotic animal, if it's a mammal. One, it has to be at a frequency that they can hear. Now, that doesn't discuss the low frequency that your peripheral nervous system picks up. It only talks about what your ear can hear and your brain. Two, it has to be intense. People call it loud, enough to cause a threshold shift. And three, you have to be in it for a specific amount of time before you get an actual loss. For people, 8 hours. For dogs, 6 hours. So here's some kennels. Kennels are coming a long way because thankfully, the military has gotten into and certain places, like the Humane Society, League for Animal Welfare. I mean, typically, since probably World War I, kennels were built out of concrete. Well, now we're back to the marine mammal pool. You're built out of concrete floor, concrete walls, uh, you know, maybe a corrugated ceiling or something like that. That's what you see. Those are highly reverberant. So, the answer is no, don't do that. Why were they built that way? Because when we started building kennels, the thought was kennels are made to protect and house the dogs, but they're also made to be clean. So concrete floor, yeah, it's impervious to water. But now, we have indoor outdoor kennels. And look, that's all concrete. But at least outdoor, it's diffuse because there's no roof or anything on it. So the reverberations, are different. What about inside? Well, now we have different kinds of flooring. When I was just at a meeting, it's a while ago, with the Homeland Security people, and they want to put new kennels up and do it right. And so they have come up with flooring systems that can be clean. They're impervious to water, but they actually are non-reverberative or to a reasonable extent. And so the building and how they're housed is very different. But look how long it took us, from the 1940s all the way up to now. And now we're just figuring out that that kennels are highly reverberant. I think not. This is noise mitigation that we have done. This is for the League in Animal Welfare here in Cincinnati. And you can see that we use sound panels. So these are acoustically absorptive. They have a metal outside that's full of holes, like a salt and pepper shaker, and the acoustic foam is on the inside. And so look at where we put them. Flat walls over each kennel, so the noise is not going over, barking, going over into the next kennel, and so on and so forth. But there's lots of different materials that you can use. Sound break panels, which come from a company called Lab. I don't know. I forget the name. Lab something Incorporated, but you get the idea. And in fact, a year after we put these in, the Kennel Master wrote an article for their professional journal that said that they had been having problems with people coming to rescue dogs. Well, that's because people would walk back there and it would be really loud, and the dogs were going crazy. How loud was it? It was over 90 dBA, which means by federal law they should not be there. So, and neither should the handlers. So, but then a year after we put them in, the dogs were very calm, and they exceeded the number of rescues that people made in that particular dogs from that particular facility. So let's take a look at what it is, and then I'll tell you how we do this, and then we're done. So these are military kennels. So here's from midnight in the lower graph, midnight all the way up to about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So before, starting at midnight, where are you at? You're at 95 periodically. It fluctuates depending on who's barking. And then all of a sudden, when it gets to be about 3:30 or so, and even worse yet at 4 o'clock, now we're over 100 decibels. Why? Because that's when the dogs know the feeder is going to come in, and they all start barking because they want their breakfast or whatever. Okay, so this is the common thing that you see in various different kennels. Here's one that, similar kind of a thing. And here's, you have some events that happen, like handlers come in to take out the dogs or something like that. Now you're looking at something that's roughly about 110 decibels. No good that is, okay? And I want to make a thing here too. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration not only gives us the permissible exposure level for people, it doesn't do it for animals yet. We do it, but it also requires signage. You are required to have signs up in your kennel and other places where sound is going to be a factor to humans and or animals. And you can go online and see what the typical sound looks like. And so, we talked with that about a number of aquariums, because aquariums have, marine mammals that are in there that they take out because they're going to do a demonstration or show, whatever you want to call it. And so they got the PA system going. They need to have signage for that. And also, if they're having, some kind of a ballroom or something like that, that they can have to have sign to let people know that, the sound level may cause a temporary threshold shift if it keeps up. All right, fine. How do we test for this? Well, the first thing we do is we go in with a sound level meter and we take samples, 24 hours worth. I hang the meter in there, I put it on go, and it's going to record every sound that happens in that kennel or that room for 24 hours. That's what gives us the graphs. Okay. LEQ means it's an average. You can't really just take an average outright of decibels because they are logarithmic. So the meters can do it because they're computers. And so you do that. We also look at what's the peak sound level that occurred over that 24 hours. What's the maximum and minimum? Okay. And again, they're measured in dBA. That's relative to a mammal or to a human. Okay. We also take dBc, which would be more like SPL, which would be good for animals of all kinds. And then we do an RT60. This is the biggie. RT60 means reverberation time, 60 minutes. It's the amount of time that it takes the noise level to get down to a level of 60 decibels, which is common for people in conversation and things like that. And so we have to calculate that. There are tables that tell us for different kinds of construction materials, how much absorption they does. Like, for instance, sheetrock will absorb more than concrete or glass. So you have to look up those things, and then it's a long calculation, but can be done with a computer. And finally, the rate path geometry, meaning if a sound is made, we know according to Snell's law that a sound that hits a wall will bounce off the wall at the same angle as it hit the wall. So we do some rate path geometry to figure that out. But the RT60 is the big thing. There's RT60s you can look it up and see for academic institutions. The worst one that we have as far as people go are kindergarten classrooms. They're highly reverberative because of the way the kids move their desks around and things like that. There are special levels that you abide by to get the reverberation RT60 down to a certain value for churches, for auditoriums, you name it. So it's a big deal, and reverberation can be, mighty dreadful. So this is how it's the noise levels and things are taken, and then you look according to audiology for dog, human, whatever, and if it's below or on the line, you're good. If it's above it, then no good. You're not getting the right values, and you need to do something to mitigate that. Okay, here's what I was just talking about. So look, for music, here's what RT60, classical symphony music or opera, is different. Okay, concert sound systems, musical theater, rock bands, okay, and even going to the movies, the cinema, classrooms, recording studios. So this gives us something to tell us about. And it's all about reverberation and absorption. What materials absorb sound best? And so I think I gave you an example of sheetrock versus concrete or sheetrock versus glass. But it is frequency dependent. Okay. So we have to worry about that. A little cartoon to show you. So you're in a room sitting there and somebody, is a sound source. They're making some kind of sound. Well, it comes into the room. Okay, what does it do? It bounces off the floor, bounces off the ceiling, bounces off of anything that's in there, like a door or a window. This is what's happening truly in any situation that you're in, except for out of doors. And again, just another little cartoon to show you what's actually happening in a pictorial comic kind of way. Okay, and you guys can read the concluding remarks here. I mean, to be sure, this is my opinion as the head of Vets Lab and all of the work that we have done to the present day and papers and whatever. So you can treat it, any way you want. Okay, for our military dogs, here's the deal. And that basically is it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Skip. That is phenomenal, especially just the amount of information and the laws behind what we need to think about with kennels and how we kennel these dogs and protect their here in our area. And that's beautiful. What we'll do now is go ahead and open the floor to some quick questions, discussions. I know I have a couple from colleagues of mine as well for myself. And Allison, to kind of kick that off, do you have any questions that you had written down or wanted to ask today at this point in time?
Yep, sure do. Okay, so Skip, we can't sanitize sheetrock and we can't sanitize the materials that you mentioned. So when we go into the kennel to clean it and we have to spray, rescue, or to do get the germs out of the kennel, and not to mention our crates, most of the kennel designs you're going to see are either going to have glass, metal, cinder block coated in epoxy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One question I had, the Cincinnati panels, I'm assuming they were made of something to where they could go in and clean the kennels and it didn't harm those blue panels, right? They were waterproof,
yes,
whatever.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's the reason why they have that outer coating on it that is metallic. So dogs can't chew on it and it's impervious to water.
So when we're building the kennels, I mean, I know I just was down in Fort Lauderdale. They had just built a brand new wing onto the Humane Society. They were now tearing it out because the kennels they put in were glass and metal, and it was a nightmare. And they were really nice ones. The same manufacturers of the kennels that I do. What is the answer then? I mean, I've got to go back and look at our blueprints because, gosh, I'm going to be rebuilding anyway. I'm not going to be building what I thought I was building. What is the answer to the kennel wall? I know the floor. I knew about the floor, but what's the answer besides, of course, the approach that you try to lessen all of the triggers that cause the sound in the first place? What is the material of the kennel walls that we can use water on, et cetera, and the sound's lowest?
Yeah. I mean, right now we're looking at things that are, the walls at least up to the 5-foot level for each kennel, if the kennels are back to back, are still being made with the standard block. Okay. But then that's the mitigation to that was why we put the sound panels above that 5-foot mark where the concrete or the block ends.
Right.
Because then everything is absorbed because it goes up.
Right.
everything is absorbed by the panels above.
And you got jumpers. I mean, we don't have the military dogs, so we're taking in, most of us out here that have the majority of dogs, we've got, I mean, I told you what our intake is. We have jumpers. And so
Yep.
probably going to have to get a little higher. Okay, you've answered that one. And then I'm going to go back to the snood because I did ask Alice this pre-show because it's all starting to hit me now. And now you've really upset me because of the transports you showed, because we transport twice a week. Sometimes we transport by airplane and sometimes we transport in the sprinters. And we're transporting in plastic crates or in metal. Alcatraz, we don't use Alcatraz because it take up too much space, but in the airplanes, it's mostly plastic crates. It never occurred to me, not one time. And the dogs are barking. They're going crazy because they're being put into the belly of an airplane or they're being put into the belly of a sprinter. I had not thought about protecting the driver's ears. The pilot's ears are covered during the flight. What am I supposed to be doing to protect the dog's ears? That's a long flight. And further on the transports and the sprinters, what should I be doing to protect the driver's ears and to lower, or what can I do to lower that whole situation?
We're back to the same old thing. The biggest thing you can do is the dogs that you have in there should be wearing some kind of hearing protection device.
I got it now.
Whether it's, huh?
I said, I've just figured that out. And I'm going to,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
I go online to like, here, Doggies Are Us, or is it Rex? Is that, what was it called? What's the company?
Rex Specs.
Is that where I go?
Yeah, REXSPECS.
And is it going to look like the one you showed in the slide? And I apologize for the people listening.
Yeah, I think, well, they've done some modifying because when we did it, it was made for military.
Right.
We didn't worry about color or anything, but they're black, but they're the same. It's a snood.
Okay, and I would buy those for the various sizes. Obviously, we don't know what size the dogs are going to be. We probably transport most of us that are large transport 150 to 200 dogs a week. So, boy, they're fixing to have a big order. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you need it, email me and I will.
Okay.
I have some pictures of how you do a fit test on it. What the measurements are, because they make 3 sizes: small, medium, large.
Great.
And another thing too on that, just from the training side of things, I'm sure Dr. Skip's seen this too during testing of the caps and whatnot. Just like anything you put on the dog, and this goes for everybody that's listening right now, whether it's the goggles, the hearing protection, no matter what you're putting in a dog vest, it doesn't matter. You always want to make sure you go through a period of training and acclimation to make sure that they're not going to want to just pull at it and try to get it off, because a lot of, our group here is very anal about putting things in the crates with dogs that you can't have eyes on watching them, what they're doing with those things in the crate. A good rule of thumb is just, for the most part, if the dog's in the crate unsupervised, you want to make sure there's nothing in there that could potentially cause an issue of the dog chewing it up. Now there's loose pieces, now there's loose debris, now it's a choking hazard. So you always want to make sure too, just keeping them, like Dr. Skip said, it's a good fit. There's a good fit test there to where, one, they're acclimated, 2, it's a good fit, because the last thing you want is a decently costly set of ear protection being pawed off the dog's head and then chewed up in the crate, and then you go to your get to point B, and then next thing you know, you found out the dog ate half of it. So that's just something to think about from an acclimation standpoint.
It's going to be interesting for you two gentlemen, because I'm thinking about Dr. Wagner at UC Davis Berkeley, who tells all of us that are large shelters, our aim is to get them in and out of a shelter as fast as possible to reduce disease. So I'm sitting here thinking, and they come in on one day and they go out the next day on an airplane, how we're going to train them with 8 hours. We just met this girl and we got to train her and get her to like us and teach her how to do all the things we want her to do and get her married to us. And that would be easier to do than training a dog in 24 hours and putting them on an airplane. Is trying to train your wife. So I'm gonna, I'll try to. I'm looking at all this and trying to figure this out about that. But this is really getting interesting.
Absolutely.
The other thing I think people that listen to this podcast are going to ask is, those of us that have kennels right now that fit everything he just said to not do, what is the device that we need to purchase to measure the sound? Because we don't have a Dr. Skip in Birmingham, Alabama that can hang things in the kennels to tell us what's going on. So would you guys please tell a CEO of a shelter, what do we need to purchase to go into the kennels? And how long do we need to leave it in there to measure the sound to protect our staff and to protect the dogs?
Okay, well, it's a sound level meter.
Okay.
And there are many different kinds that are made. They range from, like $65 to the one that I use is like $2,000. But everything in between. And I wouldn't use the low ball, the ones that are $65, but you can get some. Now, if you get the regular sound level meter and you want to save on price, it will not do an LEQ. It will not do an average. But you can take recordings with a tape recorder. I always use an H1 tape recorder. Take them in maybe thirds, like during the day, first thing in the morning, somehow in the dead of night, if you got a watch person that's there. So then I would say, if you're going to do that, take also some sound recordings, not only the meter, but maybe, and sound recordings don't need to be more than a minute. And so send it all to me and I'll analyze it and tell you what you got.
Because you can tell by looking at me, money isn't important to me. I don't work I don't work for the government. I work for the animals. So if I have to spend $2,000 on a piece of equipment to protect my staff and the dogs, I will spend it. You're lucky to meet me. So
if you email me during the week, and I will tell you I have a number of versions of sound level meters, and I'll give you all the data on them, and you can price them out.
Pick them out. And then I also think a question y'all are going to get as this podcast gets shared by me and a few other people is the people that live near data centers are going to ask the same question. I've seen it on Facebook for the last month. They're walking around down their street with their animals, and they're holding little devices in their hand and showing you on the camera. What is the device that you would recommend to the average Joe who's trying to figure out whether this data center's frequencies, hertzes, whatever?
They can either use a sound level meter like one of the cheapy ones, because it'll just give them what's happening right there then. And when they look at it, you'll see the numbers come up, and that's the number of decibels that's there. Now, it won't tell you anything about frequency. If they want that, again, they would have to have a small handheld recorder that can record, and then I can do the, or have one of my graduate students do the analysis for it. But a cheap sound level meter, and there are some that are, pocket size, and they're easy, just, Radio Shack made them for years.
Got it. And last question, I swear. In testimony last week, Mr. Sampson, older gentleman, kept trying to describe for the court. He was describing the sounds. He had recordings of the sounds. The court definitely took notice of these sounds. It would drive anybody nuts. But he kept describing, he was trying to describe a low hum, a thing that he could not put words into this thing that was driving him and his wife crazy, so they don't go outside anymore. He said he could occasionally feel it inside, but he just couldn't put words to it. And the attorney didn't even know how to ask him. He just kept saying there's just this hum, this thing. What is he talking about?
So he's talking about something is putting out a low frequency that his nervous system, his peripheral nervous system is picking up, but his ears are not, or his ears are picking it up because it's just about, it might be just at 20 hertz or a little bit below. And that sounds to me like that's what he's all about. And if he's hearing it in the house, sometimes especially low frequencies, if you've got, China on a shelf and that stuff starts, go attenuating through the wall, then, the china's going to start to vibrate and
He
everything.
said
So
that.
what he's likely not able to describe is he and his wife are feeling the vibrations that are coming from whatever the sound source is that's delivering it.
Well,
from
that's
the-
the big
from the,
question, everybody, the 17 attorneys on one side, what is that coming? He wasn't there before, so how does one determine what's new in the neighborhood making it? What's that going to be likely coming from?
Yeah. I think the facility that they want to put up, these engineers would have to, they
Okay.
would have to do some testing, to do it right, what they would have to do is whatever the generators are that are going to use, the generator has specifications, and you need to know what they are. What frequency does the motor put out, so on and so forth, because that's the only way the manufacturer knows all that. And then that's what they can use, or they can record it and we can analyze it. But yeah,
Is there
that's the name of the game. It's all about vibration and reverberation.
It's crazy. And have I got something in our shelter right now that's producing these HZs? Have I got something that's producing a continuous hum in my shelter? How do I know?
Best I can think of right off the bat, unless you can locate it, by hearing, would be to walk around with a sound level meter and
Okay.
find
Fair
out where
enough.
you get the highest numbers.
Yeah, because I also remember, because I listened carefully, that you said in the previous podcast or in a conversation that abatement walls may help with sound, but they don't help with HZs. That the HZs can go around them, right?
Okay. Okay, so a little bit of terminology. The abatement walls will help with absorbing sounds at different frequencies.
Got it.
Depending on what it is.
Okay.
Sound is a bad word because it's so general. You don't
know.
know if you're talking about frequency or intensity.
But the thing that goes around those walls is the HZs that can go around that.
Well, frequency and intensity go together.
Okay. So an abatement wall doesn't
So
help.
20 hertz, at 20 hertz, in order for it to go around or vibrate or travel, it probably needs to be at a fairly high intensity, like, above 60 decibels. And same thing for high frequencies, especially high frequencies. They're not easy to tell, but yeah, every sound has a frequency and an intensity, or a group of frequencies and intensity that make up and characterize that sound.
Okay. Okay. Those were my questions.
Cool.
Dr. Skip, I want to go back to part 1. This has been eating at me for a week now, if not 2. It's because preface this. So going back to your discussion on modeling other dogs. So you brought up the instance of you knew a couple who adopted this deaf dog, completely deaf, and it modeled the other dog in the household that wasn't deaf for cues. We all know that animals are physical creatures. When they learn different habits, when we train them, A plus B equals C, they're very physical creatures. They go off everything we teach them physically. So modeling that deaf dog, modeling the other canine that wasn't deaf, because when the dog bowls came out, when mom or dad grabbed the keys, it saw the other dog get excited. So it was, oh, something's about to happen. Well, let me get excited too. So it was modeled, couldn't hear anything, but based on the physical cues it was seeing, it was presenting that it wasn't deaf. It's acting like a normal dog based off those physical traits, those physical cues. So having said that, do you see a relation there? Because I've had military working dog handlers say over a dog's 4, 5, 6 year career, I've taken this dog on 3 or 4 deployments. It's been on so many missions, helicopter rides, shooting, and it appears fine. Like, I don't see anything wrong with it. Hearing's good to go. I can't notice anything out of the norm of my dog performing or going on mission. Seems fine. 5 years down the road, seems fine. I don't think it really needs hearing protection. I think it's okay. Does modeling play a role when it comes to a dog that's, again, been in the field, been working for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, because it's seen, oh, okay, every time mom or dad grabs my prong collar, we're about to go do something. Oh, the weapon's up. I know something's about to go down. We're about to do a breaching. We're about to clear something. I'm about to bite somebody. Let's get excited. So based off what the dog's seeing physically, it's still rolling through the same motions that it was at 1 or 2 years old when its hearing was okay. But even though its hearing more than likely is getting worse and worse and worse, it's presenting that it's okay based off physical traits it's seen. It's modeling its surroundings, its handler, the team. It's just regurgitating everything it's been doing physically over the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So, do you see modeling being present in that sense of when you hear people say, well, the dog's acting fine, doesn't seem like it's deaf or has hearing problems? Well, that's because it could be modeling physical traits or physical cues. Do you see that
Yeah.
being potential?
Yeah. I mean, the dogs, like some people, tend to be OCD, which is why we train them to do things, and we can trust them to be in front of the platoon, doing things because that's what they've always been exposed to. Now, does that mean that the dog is not losing its hearing? Categorically not, uh, because, as I mentioned a number of times, loss of hearing occurs over an exorbitantly lifetime of a human or animal. And therefore, the dog is not going to necessarily show outright until the time that the dog is actually now profoundly deaf. Then you're going to start to see differences in is it paying attention to the handler? Is it doing the things that it normally does? And so that's a problem because people don't observe that. And and this I worked with Becca Baxter at Fort Bragg, and we set up a hearing conservation program. Those dogs need to be tested when they come back from theater, before they go out, and at least annually, because that's the only way you're going to know if that dog is losing its hearing. And the problem with that, a lot of times comes down to money because they don't want to keep on buying dogs from, Norway or whatever like that. And but the fact of the matter is that every exposure is bringing that dog closer to the end of its working life, and you can't see it.
Percent, absolutely. I'm 1,000% agree, and it's that little bit by bit by bit that adds up all over all those years. And
Absolutely.
so yeah, and again, to me, if I'm a military working dog handler, tier one handler, LE, whatever, it's where even search and rescue, where I depend on my dog to read situations and act accordingly based off how I've trained this dog, and it could be saving my life or my team's life. I depend on this dog very, very much. God forbid, because we all know dogs, again, when they see side picture, hey, I see bad guy, hands are up. It goes through reps and reps and reps and training of side picture, side picture, side picture, to where I know the next cue. You don't even have to tell me. I know what I'm doing next. Let me go. I'm off. I'm off.
Yeah.
But God forbid you get in a situation that, environmentally speaking, the dog's never been exposed to. It's relying on your commands, physical, verbal or physical commands. It's in an unknown environment, unknown situation that you either haven't trained for and it's ever been exposed to. God forbid you have to do a call off or some type of verbal thing, and that's when you find out your dog's hearing's not great. God forbid.
Yeah.
That's the
Yep.
time. So that's, to me,
Ex-
is where,
exactly.
like you said, for these dogs in theater or any SWAT, LE, any dog that has to do with preserving mine and my team's life or safety, this needs to be seriously considered, and perhaps even, we may not do a whole lot, we may not be going into action all the time, but at least annual testing to get baselines, just like us and just like how we go to the doctor for, again, our eyesight, the dentist, our health. We need to be taking that into consideration, because that could be something life threatening to me and my team. And that kind of leads me to my next question I wrote down here. Um, just taking quick notes where you're speaking earlier. So going back to the kennels, those, 90, 100, 120 dBs over so many hours, even just minutes, we're not talking at that point, because I know, again, we've brought this up numerous times. Hearing is the invisible problem that nobody factors, because it's not like breaking a bone. You don't experience it all at once. So why would anybody think about it? It's over time. It's
Yeah.
not happening now, and it's not something you have to fix right now until it's too late. But outside of theater or work, breaching, shooting, training, whatever the dog's seen, most of the time the dog is spending a lot more time in the kennel around those 20, 30, 40 other dogs, depending on where you're at. Um, that in and of itself, you're not just affecting its hearing at that time. Now you're talking against every other system in its body. It could be losing sleep, lowering its ability to fight off infection, lowering its immune system because, again, the loud noise, it's affecting every other system in its body, not just its hearing. So if you're not going to consider putting up acoustic panels or mitigating those risks and those sounds in your kennels for just their hearing, you're not just thinking about their, excuse me, not just their hearing at that point. You need to take care of that for the overall well-being of the dog holistically to be mission ready, because you're potentially ruining and sacrificing their readiness just by being exposed to that type of environment.
Yeah, as Orville once said to Wilbur, you're right. I think that I'm not a veterinarian. I don't profess to be one, but from a point of view of just plain old neuroscience, like I said, your peripheral nervous system is going to respond to various different things. It's not going to always be visible to a handler, just like it's not usually visible to, all the millions of people that have dog or dogs or cats for pets, and and they don't notice things until the last minute. Well, they're not trained to do that. But you get some things that happen, like some of the handlers come back from Afghanistan, and they say, gee, we got off the chopper and the dog was not taking verbal commands. Well, yeah, because he couldn't hear you. That's why he wasn't ignoring you. That's a sign, and you need to follow up with that. But we don't tend to have the military police dogs or police, SWAT or whatever, tested routinely on a in a program. And that's where Becca came in, because she wanted me to work with her to put a hearing conservation program together to exactly stop that, so that they are getting at least an annual view of what's going on, to let the handlers and the powers that be know, what's the status of this dog. People are going to depend on the dog, like you say. You're dependent on it for your life. So it's not the kind of thing that you just let go. It's like saying, well, I'm never going to go for an annual physical to the doctor and I'll just die when I die. Well, yeah, if you're going to do that, then you get what you deserve. So, training people, handlers, to know the signs and understand that that the dog it's a trained animal, and it does what it's supposed to do when it's properly trained. But there are some things that are outside of training that you need to attend to. That's why we have veterinarians. And so it's important that they are giving their sense of things.
Absolutely, 100%. And last quick question, Dr. Skip. So speaking on a specific training instance or just training overall, a big thing for all these handlers is not just exposure, but making sure my dog is acclimated, and I check that box that, is this dog going to be okay? Is it going to be proofed for gunfire acclimation? My dog's actually going to work past those loud noises, those loud dBs. I'm not here to discourage or sway or change anybody's SOPs or training philosophy, nothing like that, but just scientifically to consider this. If I check those boxes, whether it be 1, 3, 5 rounds, 5, 5, 6, 9mm, what have you, even a couple times of, a safe distance away, obviously from a breaching charge or flash bangs, whatever environmentals I'm running my dog through to ensure it's mission ready and it's appropriate. Once those boxes are briefly checked and it's okay, I really need to start thinking, for safety's sake, again, once the box is checked, now we know this dog is acclimated, we know it's mission ready, we know it's proofed. Let's start putting caps, snood systems, something we know works, on during all of our other training events. Whether it's transportation, we're going to the range once a month with the dog. We know the dog's good, we don't need to continue on. We don't need to be shooting around this dog with 5.56 constantly now that we know it's good to go, mission ready. Let's go put some hearing protection back on the dog and train and preserve its hearing for the rest of our training. Would that be a safe thing to say?
I would, there's an opinion, but I would agree with you on that. I mean, anything that you can do to mitigate constant noise. You know, one of the things that I tell some of the handlers when I'm at a base is that, so you put your dog in a kennel, and the dog is in there for, 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever like that. Probably when you go in the next morning to take that dog out, it already has a temporary threshold shift. Now you're going to take the dog and go down to the range and shoot. You're just adding to that temporary shift. Why would a person do that? Well, I understand. I'm military too. I get it. Yeah, the dog needs to be trained, but you need to be smart about how you're going to mitigate when you train, getting some ear rest in between things or whatever like that. Not that you got to change your whole damn schedule, but even just using hearing protection a little bit, on the range or whatever, anything you can do, kennel mitigation, that's all helpful, because you just can't, you can only drive a person or a dog or any other animal so far in the hearing regime before you have topped it off and now you're at the point of no return.
Right. And again, if all for naught and any, you don't want to consider the hearing, then consider and take into serious factor its overall well-being and mission readiness. Potentially making mistakes because it is fatigued, it is tired from loud noise exposure over 8 or 10 or 12 hours or throughout the week, and nobody cared to factor that or take care of it. I think, again, a bigger picture is just overall health and well-being. And that's what audiology.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
So perfect. Allison, did you have anything else?
Nope, not for right now. I've got a million questions, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there quickly.
Well, I know, as I told the audience in part 1, as we mentioned, part 3 will be nothing but open discussion, answering questions. So for everyone out there that's listening, whether it's in Spotify, again, I apologize for the video upset. Working through getting proper YouTube channels up for this too, so you can see the slides and whatnot. Where you can comment, whether it's Spotify, email us, email Dr. Skip, DM on Instagram, whatever channel you want to use. Feel free to ask your questions, ask your use cases. If you have a specific instance pertaining to you and your team or unit, feel free to ask. We'll get that answered for next week when we hop on part 3. But for now, Dr. Skip, Allison, thank you all so much for joining us. Again, I can't thank, two phenomenal individuals for giving their time for this wonderful 3-part podcast. So guess if there's nothing else, we'll see everybody at part 3 next week.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Allison. And definitely, Alex, as you get more entrenched into Vet's Lab and everything, before you know it, you'll be an audiologist. Who knows?
I probably will too.
That's the next steps. Yeah, I need to work on my signature, get that thing a little bit longer. So.
Exactly.
I'm going to turn both of you into the dark side here.
I know it. I think I already am.
I love it. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Bye-bye.